All right, so my research was about the brain-gut axis, or more importantly, how the hypothalamus affects our gut and how our gut affects our hypothalamus. So I'm going to do a little video here about the hypothalamus first.
Hypothalamus. The hypothalamus regulates a wide range of behavioral and physiological activities. It controls many autonomic functions such as hunger, thirst, body temperature, and sexual activity. To do this, the hypothalamus integrates information from many different parts of the brain and is responsive to a variety of stimuli, including light. It regulates circadian rhythms, odors, stress, and arousal. Other functions controlled by the hypothalamus include parenting behavior, perspiration, blood pressure, and heart rate.
All right. So that being said, I'm going to focus a little bit more on hunger. So I'm going to talk a little bit about energy homeostasis, which is how our body manages energy. So we eat stuff and then we burn stuff, and that's the way we keep our healthy weight. But there's a lot of things that can interact with our body and make this homeostasis not be balanced, and that's what happens when obesity is established. So there's a broken energy homeostasis, and its inefficient regulation will lead towards it. So on this little picture, we can see how the brain sends neuro and endocrine signals. So there is neurological signals and endocrine signals and or hormones that will try to keep a balanced energy homeostasis, and it will send messages to our gut and to our microbiota, and that will send messages back to the brain to keep this balance. So there used to be this part of the brain where they say this is our satiety point or feeding point. So if one of these points of our hypothalamus is stimulated, then we get more hungry. Or if this other point of our hypothalamus is stimulated, then we will be satiated and be less hungry. And that's how they say that lesions in our hypothalamus can lead either to obesity or to anorexia nervosa. So the hypothalamus regulates many aspects of energy homeostasis, adjusting both drive to eat and the expenditure of energy in response to a wide range of nutritional and other signals. And this process is highly complex because it involves several brain regions. I'm not going to go into all the brain regions right now because it's going to be too long. I'm going to just focus on the hypothalamus right now. And there's certain parts of the hypothalamus that are more sensitive to different types of hormones. But I'm going to focus right now mostly on the bacteria that we have in our gut and how that sends the message to the hypothalamus, and how those two things will make us have a healthy microbiota and keep our brain healthy as well, or have an unhealthy gut, which makes our brain be unhealthy. So I'm going to avoid the leptin and the insulin because this is very related with weight more than anything. And mainly what leptin and insulin have to do is, with some studies with mice, they realize that it could be like a cure for obesity if they would inject leptin to mice. They showed that injecting leptin to mice would make them lose weight, but this was only on mice that had low leptin levels. But their leptin receptors were intact, whereas it didn't have any effect on those mice that had their leptin receptors lesioned, which means they couldn't prove that injecting leptin to our body can do anything. So I'm going to just avoid this, and I'm going to go straight to the microbiota and the gut-brain axis. So the microbiota and the gut-brain axis is a bidirectional communication between the central and enteric nervous system, linking emotional and cognitive centers of the brain with peripheral intestinal functions. And they say it's bidirectional because it's from the gut to the brain and from the brain to the gut. So it's both sides. Mainly what the gut-brain axis is its role is to monitor and integrate the gut functions as well as to link emotional and cognitive centers of the brain with our peripheral intestinal functions. And so I'm gonna show how if you don't have a healthy gut, then that can lead to an unhealthy brain or a misfunction of our hypothalamus in stress or anxiety or overeating. So here I talk a little bit more about evidence, and mainly what happens is that 20 years ago, when a little bit of all this microbial information started coming out, they realized that providing some of their patients, or more specifically their hepatic encephalopathy patients, with probiotics would help or would show improvements on these patients. The evidence I've been reading a little bit more about was the role of microbiota, especially in autism. Dysbiosis means there is a misfunction or an abnormality of our microbiota in our stomachs. And it is very common to talk about dysbiosis in autism. And I've been working with autism for 5 years. And most of our clients have been treated with DSL-3, which is a probiotic pill that helps their gut. And anxiety and depression are two of the most common things that show in autism. And we've been seeing a lot that when we try to keep healthy guts on our patients, then we prevent a lot the anxiety and the depression behaviors in them. I'm going to show a little bit of a video here. It's going to be a quick video, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it.
In 2004, a study was done involving two groups of mice. One of these groups had the germs in their stomach artificially removed, while the other had theirs left intact. Both groups were wired up and then exposed to a stressful experience. What they found that was while both groups responded to the stressor, the germ-free mice had a measurably exaggerated response. This sparked interest in a concept called the gut-brain axis. The idea that the microbes in your intestines vastly affect the way your brain and nervous system function. The link had previously not been made, but the next question was, of course, could this have an application for humans? It turns out it does, in a big way. There is in fact a war going on in your gut. The so-called good bacteria are pitted against the so-called bad bacteria. Now, who's winning this fight is of great importance to you. These bacteria can affect everything from mood to obesity levels. Both bacteria control important levers in the enteric nervous system, which in turn cause chemical cascades that affect all parts of your body, right up to your brain. An overabundance of the bad guys, for example, causes an imbalance that results in some very common psychological problems. While the good guys, on the other hand, can help keep us relaxed, they do this by releasing GABA and stimulating the vagus nerve, amongst other things. This collective of gut bacteria is known as the microbiome. They live inside you, in symbiosis. You need them, and they need you. But just like you, they need to be fed in the right way. This brings us to a fact that has been known by most cultures, for at least thousands of years, that what you eat shapes who you are. The food you put into your gut encourages the growth of one of these kinds of bacteria, and that in turn affects all the aforementioned things. Given these advances, scientists have identified certain foods that encourage the good guy bacteria, and they call them probiotics. Now you might think this is a scientific breakthrough. Well, not quite. These have been known for literally thousands of years by the Roman, the Vedic, and the Chinese cultures, to name a few. 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, men of the Thracian consumption of sour milk. Many health professionals don't make much of this connection. Could this issue be an elephant in the room in mental health? Rates of mental illness are on an all-time high. About 9% of people are on antidepressants in the UK. In the USA, the figure is over 10%. Antidepressants, this not only ignores our organ, is highly sensitive to the environmental and is absolutely shaped by what you eat. The probiotics of yesteryear have been removed from the modern diet, in favor of other foods, and no prizes for guessing the kind of bacteria they encourage.
All right. So going back to how the microbiota affects us. So most of the studies that were done are showing that all of the problems that people were showing in their brain, or more like the anxiety behaviors or the problems in the mucosa of their stomachs, or a lot of other things, could be, all these anomalies could be restored after the microbiota in the gut will be restored. So healthy levels of inflammatory cells would come back. And the probiotics reduce stress-induced release of cortisol, anxiety, and depression-related behavior. So they show that taking these probiotics helped a lot in restoring all these anomalies, which means that there is some relationship between our gut and our brains. Another thing that shows that there is a relationship between the gut and the brain is that a lot of healthy individuals have the same bacterial phenotypes in their bellies, and whoever has an anomaly in them starts having different types of bacteria in there, which is the bad bacteria that video was talking about. So mainly what it shows here is that if we have dysbiosis or an unhealthy microbial diversity, and we have bad gut microbiota, then we're gonna have like altered levels of neurotransmitters, and that is gonna activate different things in our body that will lead to our brain to have anxiety, depression, sensitivity to stress, social alterations, and then decreased learning and decreased levels of memory. And that will also have to do with obesity, because if our gut is unhealthy and it's sending the wrong signals to our brain, then our body starts overeating, trying to keep that gut healthy, or trying to restore that healthy gut. But if we have a leaky gut, which means that there is unhealthy stuff in our stomachs, then we have a worse absorption of nutrients, which means that we start overeating to try to get all those nutrients, but we're not actually getting them. So here it says a little bit of all the things that are dysregulated by our gut microbiota, and how we can restore all of those things by just taking probiotics or a healthy diet and fixing all those things. So in conclusion, the gut microbiota has an important role in bidirectional interactions between the gut and the nervous system, and it interacts with our central nervous system by regulating the brain chemistry and influencing neuroendocrine systems associated with stress response, anxiety, and memory function. The effects of the central nervous system on microbiota composition are likely mediated by the perturbation of the normal luminal or mucosal habitat that can also be restored by the use of probiotics and a possibly healthy diet. So how to keep a healthy hypothalamus is by keeping a healthy diet. Studies on rats and humans have shown that diets rich in sugar or fats leads to inflammation in our hypothalamus. Getting enough sleep, because studies have shown that sleep deprivation lead to a hypothalamic dysfunction, and regular exercise. The studies have shown that regular exercise lead to reduced hypothalamic inflammation related to high-fat diets. So that's pretty much the relationship between the brain and the gut.